In the rustling silence of the jungle, secrets sleep between the leaves. But sometimes, the silence is broken by cries that run faster than the wind. It was early morning, yet the sun hadn't touched that dense part of the forest. Thick bamboo groves, thorny shrubs, and wild trees cast long shadows over the earth. Amidst it all, a girl ran, panting, breathless, and terrified. Her name was Grace. A torn scarf clung to her shoulder. Her face, streaked with sweat, dust, and fear, looked like a painting of pain. Cradled tightly in her arms was a fragile newborn, barely hours old. "Stop right there, sir. We know everything. You can't escape." The voice echoed behind her. Her uncles and two brothers, raging like wild beasts, were chasing her through the forest, sticks and stones in hand, their eyes burning with fury. Grace didn't know where she was running. The forest was unfamiliar. But fear was her fuel, burning in her chest, pushing her feet faster. She ran like a hunted deer fleeing its predator. And through it all, the baby's soft, helpless cries stabbed her heart like thorns. Still, she didn't stop. Thorns scratched her legs, branches whipped her arms, but her grip on the baby never loosened. Finally, she stumbled behind a dense cluster of bushes. Thorns tore at her clothes as she crouched beneath a spiny tree, gasping for breath. The baby, sensing her mother's panic, cried even louder, tiny fists waving in the air, her voice piercing the silence. And just like that, the jungle listened. "Please stay quiet, my love. Please, or they'll find us." Grace held the baby close to her trembling chest, whispering through cracked lips. But the newborn wailed louder, starving, confused, and freshly torn from the womb into a world of chaos. She was too young to know fear, but her mother's shivering arms told her something wasn't right. Grace looked around desperately. The forest was silent, but the wind still carried the angry echoes of her pursuers, her uncle and brothers. She must be here. That filthy girl. Even the forest won't hide her from us. Grace's eyes filled with tears. With one hand, she guided the baby's mouth to her chest. Despite her racing heart and short, broken breaths, in that moment, something calmed. It was as if all her shame, pain, and regrets melted into that one act of motherhood. As her baby suckled, Grace closed her eyes. The jungle, the fear, the voices, it all faded away for a heartbeat. Then a hiccup. The baby began crying again. "No, no, not now. Please, my little one, don't cry," Grace begged, almost broken. She knew they were close. Too close. In a sudden decision, her eyes landed on a shaded patch beneath a thick bush. The earth was soft. The leaves were low. It looked safe. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but if I want you to live, I have to leave you." With shaking hands, she tore a strip from her shawl, wrapped the baby gently, and placed her beneath the thickest branches. She laid a thick stick nearby, just in case an animal came close. "No, I can't do this," she whispered, hesitating. She looked down one last time at the baby's face, kissed her forehead, and turned away, back toward the thorny path she had come from. Her plan was simple. She would return by dusk, quietly take the child, and hand her to someone who could help. Someone who could protect her. But fate had other plans. Before she could leave the forest, her uncle and brothers emerged, rage burning in their eyes. "There she is. Where's that cursed child? Speak, or we'll end it right here." Grace fell to her knees, sobbing. "Please, she's just a baby. She's innocent. If I've done wrong, then punish me, but let her live." Her uncle's voice thundered. "A bastard child born of a shameful affair is as filthy as the sin itself. You've disgraced our name, our family, and now you beg for mercy." He raised his stick. They had broken her spirit. As the village men dragged Sarah away in chains, her heart wasn't thinking of her bruises or her shame. It was thinking of the child, her child, left alone in the vast, wild jungle. Back in the underbrush, where sunlight was just beginning to trickle through the canopy, something stirred. From between the rustling leaves, a cat appeared, lean and watchful, her fur dusted with forest soil. Hunger burned quietly in her belly. Perhaps she had lost her own litter. Perhaps she had been searching all night for something warm, something alive. And then she saw the baby. The infant squirmed softly in the thin cloth Grace had wrapped her in. But the cat did not hiss. She did not strike. Instead, she moved closer, slowly, cautiously, and sniffed the tiny bundle. The baby's cheeks were damp with tears and sweat. The cat tilted her head, then began to lick them gently, her rough tongue cleaning the child's face like a mother comforting her own. She curled up beside the baby, wrapping her slender body protectively around the newborn. There was no milk, but there was warmth. And there was something more, a shadow of motherhood in the heart of this wild creature. She stayed. She didn't leave even for a moment. Meanwhile, in the village, Grace had been locked away. Her uncle had declared himself the judge, jury, and executioner. Her own mother hadn't opened the door for her once. Fear, shame. Who knows what held her silent? The crowd outside their house hurled insults. But none of that mattered to Grace anymore. Her thoughts stayed rooted in that patch of forest. Her child. Alone. And as the jungle slipped into night once again, something remarkable happened. Under the soft silver glow of moonlight, the baby stopped crying. She nestled into the cat's warm belly. The cat now rested with her head bent gently against the baby's neck. A soft purring filled the night. The jungle that had once been a place of fear had become a cradle of comfort. Only the whisper of leaves and the occasional distant call of an owl broke the silence. The baby slept, wrapped in a scrap of cloth, pressed to the warmth of a creature who didn't understand humans, but understood love. The cat was not of her species. She didn't speak her language, but her presence radiated protection like a real mother's watchful breath. She stretched her tail over the bush like a shield. Her eyes, half open, half alert, scanned the darkness. If anything moved, she would know. And then dawn came. The sun's first rays crept into the bush. The baby stirred. Hunger returned like a wave. Her stomach twisted with need, and soon her cries filled the morning. But this time, they weren't whimpers. They were sharp, desperate wails. The cat lifted her head. She licked the baby's cheek, cooing softly in her own way, trying to soothe her. She curled tighter, her body a cocoon. But hunger could not be silenced. Suddenly, on the far end of the bush, something moved. A slow rustle. A shadow. From the thicket emerged a mongoose, long, sinewy, and silent. Its paws were caked in wet mud. Its eyes glowed with wild hunger. It sniffed the air, catching the scent of the infant. Food. The cat tensed. Her breath quickened. The mongoose crept forward, inch by inch, like a skilled predator. The baby's cries grew louder, more frantic. And the cat knew this was the moment. In one motion, she pulled the baby closer beneath her chest, tail sweeping protectively around the tiny body. Then, baring her teeth, she locked eyes with the hunter. A silent war had begun in the underbrush of the forest. The mongoose crept closer, its eyes fixed on the helpless infant. But before it could strike, the cat stood her ground and let out a sound no creature in that forest had ever heard before. It wasn't a hiss. It wasn't a growl. It was a roar of defiance, straight from the soul of a creature transformed by motherhood. Her spine arched like a drawn bow, fur bristling, eyes glowing like live embers. She looked small, but in that moment, she was fierce, not a cat, but a mother fighting for her child. The mongoose lunged, and the cat, once just a prowler of branches and hunter of mice, launched herself like a wild flame. She struck with her claws, raking across the mongoose's face. Dust flew in all directions. Leaves trembled. The silence of the jungle shattered. The mongoose retaliated, sinking its teeth deep into her leg. Blood spilled, a thin, crimson line on the jungle floor. But she didn't stop. Pain no longer mattered. Fear had left her. All that remained was instinct, the kind that isn't taught, only felt. She attacked again. This time more viciously. She clawed, bit, twisted. The mongoose shrieked. The infant's cries grew louder, each wail like fire fueling the cat's fury. And then, a final, piercing scream. The mongoose fell beneath her weight, its last gurgle lost in the underbrush. It twitched once, then lay still. The cat was wounded. Her front paw was torn and bleeding. Her breathing came in rapid bursts. But she didn't retreat. She turned back toward the baby, limping but determined. She pressed her body around the child once more. Her heart beat like thunder against the baby's back. Slowly, the child stopped crying, lulled by the rhythm of her heartbeat, calmed by the warmth of her fur. But now a new problem loomed. The child was hungry, very hungry, and the cat, starving for days, had no milk to offer. She looked down at the baby, then up at the trees, then all around her. She couldn't give up now. With pain in her paw and resolve in her eyes, she gently laid the baby on a patch of soft, dry grass beneath the bush. She pawed the dirt around them, making a protective rim of earth and leaves to shield the baby from crawling threats. Then she looked back one last time and limped into the deeper jungle. Her eyes scanned for anything that might save the infant's life. Finally, she reached the far edge of the forest. A clearing, an old forgotten well. Nearby, a cracked clay pot lay overturned in the dirt. Inside, stuck to the base, was a thin crust of dried cream, perhaps remnants of goat or cow milk left behind by a herder. Her nose twitched. She limped closer, dipped her paw, scraped what she could, and licked it carefully. It wasn't much, but it was something. And that was all she needed. With newfound urgency, she scoured the area, licking dew from leaves, clawing at hollow logs, scraping the remains of a fruit rind, tipping over old vessels, and using a large tree bark strip as a makeshift dish. She returned to the pot again and again, collecting every trace of fat or milk. By dusk, she'd managed to gather a small puddle of creamy liquid on the tree bark. Wounded, weary, and bleeding, the cat gripped the bark tray with her teeth and began the long journey back to the infant she now claimed as her own. She didn't know what she was. She wasn't the baby's kind. She didn't know language, names, or right and wrong. But somewhere deep inside her wild heart, she knew that no child should starve while she still breathed. The cat darted back to the bush where the baby lay crying, her tiny fists clenched, cheeks soaked with tears. Without wasting a moment, the cat gently placed the bark tray filled with cream beside her and carefully dabbed a bit onto the baby's lips. The baby's eyes fluttered open. The moment the cream touched her tongue, her cries softened, turning into hiccups. It was as if she had finally found a mother's embrace. The cat stayed close, patting the baby softly with her paw, curling her body around her to keep her warm. When the child's breathing finally slowed and her eyes began to close, the cat nestled beside her, letting her heartbeat lull the baby to sleep. But the cat knew this was only the beginning. Today, she had been lucky to find scraps of milk and cream. But how long could she risk her life scavenging every day in the wild? There was no guarantee. And the baby she would need milk again, tomorrow and the next day. This forest was not her home. No one had ever nurtured her here. Yet now she was a mother, and she needed help. The cat rose and looked toward the deeper part of the jungle. There was only one thought in her mind. Was there another animal in this forest, a real mother, one who could give milk? She walked cautiously, every step calculated, her injured paw aching. Soon, beneath a tree, she heard a rustle. She paused, peeking through the underbrush. There, sitting quietly, was a pair of monkeys. The mother cradled her infant in her arms, nursing him with quiet affection. Hope flickered in the cat's eyes. But how could she ask for help? Slowly, softly, she stepped out from the bushes. Her posture was humble. As soon as the monkey mother saw her, she froze. The father leapt forward with a hiss, his protective roar shaking the branches. Still, the cat did not move. She neither advanced nor fled. Her body language spoke volumes. I am not your enemy. I am just a mother. She slowly extended her paw and began tracing a circle in the dirt beneath the tree. Then she sat quietly inside it, silent, vulnerable, but dignified. The monkey father remained tense, but the mother's eyes softened. The cat stood up and turned away, heading back to the bush, where the baby was sleeping. Moments later, the monkey couple exchanged glances. A quiet understanding passed between them. Then, hesitantly, the mother monkey began to follow the cat. Back at the bush, the baby had woken and begun crying again, hunger returning like a storm. The cat sat beside her, placing a gentle paw on the baby's back as if to whisper, "Hold on, little one." And just then, rustling leaves signaled the monkey mother's arrival. Behind her, the father followed slowly, climbing the trees and pausing at every branch. When the monkey mother heard the baby's cries, something in her shifted. She stepped forward. The cat moved aside to make space. The monkey bent down. The baby, sensing warmth nearby, instinctively reached out, and as soon as her cheek brushed the monkey's chest, her cries stopped. Her tiny mouth found milk again. Peace returned. The cat sat nearby, watching. Tears welled in her eyes, not of pain, but of something deeper. Of victory. Of love. From that day forward, every morning, the monkey mother would arrive near the bush. The cat would wait for her. She would nurse the human baby, then gently rock her, sometimes even humming in soft monkey tones meant for her own child, now gifted to this orphan of another world. Time passed. The baby's cries no longer echoed through the jungle. The sharp rustles that once signaled danger grew rare. The forest corner where the cat and the child lived had found a strange but peaceful rhythm. The cat built a nest. But this was no ordinary nest. It was a moving cradle woven from bark, soft grass, shredded silk from an old cloth, and dried leaves. Light enough to carry, strong enough to keep the baby still as she slept. The cat would gently hold it in her mouth, carrying it wherever they needed to go, beneath bushes, inside tree roots, or in the shade of a cave. Wherever safety and shadow called, the cat placed her child. One hot afternoon, the baby lay in a deep sleep, tucked inside the cradle, hidden in the shade of a thick bush. The cat spread dry leaves around the area to alert her of any approaching danger. She licked the baby's forehead gently and left, to find food. Because even love needed strength, and strength needed sustenance. But danger was already on its way. From the other side of the bush, a cold sound began to creep in, the slithering whisper of scales over dry leaves. Not footsteps, not a growl, but a presence you feel, not see. A large, thick, gleaming snake was inching closer. Its body shimmered like polished stone, but its colors whispered poison. Its tongue flicked the air, tasting the scent of the baby's warmth. Its gaze locked onto her tiny moving hands. Just 2 feet away, it was ready to strike. The baby stirred in her sleep. At that exact moment, the cat returned. Her eyes landed on the snake. Her breath caught. The serpent hovered, its mouth inches from the baby's face. Its tongue was practically tasting her skin. The cat's eyes burned red. Without a moment's thought, she leapt, claws extended, heart roaring. The snake recoiled, but it was too late. A violent battle erupted. The serpent coiled and thrashed, striking at her with terrifying speed. It slammed her to the ground with its tail, hissed with fury. But the cat was no longer just a cat. She was a mother. And mothers don't back down. She clawed at its head, bit into its neck. The snake hissed and tried to bite her back, but she grabbed its throat in her paws and held on. Her ears were torn. Her body was trembling, but her grip never loosened. And then, with a final screech, the jungle fell silent. The snake's body collapsed, unmoving. The cat's breathing was heavy. Her legs wobbled, but her eyes, still burning, turned to the cradle. The baby was still asleep, peaceful, unaware of the battle just fought for her life. The cat now knew. This place was no longer safe. If a snake could reach here, what else might come? It was time to go. Time to journey deeper into the unknown, for the sake of a child she did not give birth to, but one she would now die for. Would you like the next chapter to explore their journey into the deeper jungle, a mystical animal village, or a human rescue twist? The cat swiftly picked up the nest in her mouth, gently checked on the baby inside, then used her tail to clear the ground around, careful to leave no scent trail for predators. She darted deep into the forest, heading toward a direction where sunlight barely touched the earth and the air barely stirred. It was a place of thick shadows, ancient trees, solid ground near the ravine, and the sound of distant waterfalls. After hours of silent journeying, the cat reached a hidden spot untouched by human presence. A large cave stood there, damp inside but warm, sheltered by a flowing stream and surrounded by berry-laden bushes. She carved out a small corner, nestled the baby safely, and licked her own wounds before curling protectively around the child. That night, she slept deeply, her paw resting gently on the child's chest, ready to shield her from even the shadows. Time moved like wings in flight. Though the jungle changed, the moisture, the cave, the bubbling stream, one bond stayed constant: the silent, sacred relationship between a cat and the human child she'd rescued. That child was now 7 years old, raised by the forest, yet nurtured by motherly love. Her skin wasn't filthy but glowing. Her hair, though wild, carried a natural wave. Her eyes, deep, curious, mirrored the very feline that had become her mother. No one knew her name, but the cat had one special sound for her, a distinct meow, different every time, sometimes a call, sometimes a lullaby, sometimes a scold. And the girl, who now understood every gesture, sound, and movement of her feline mother, would come running barefoot across the forest floor whenever she heard it. Her steps were as swift as the cat's. The twisted roots, the thorns, the rugged terrain, these had become her world. The two were inseparable. If the cat left to drink from a stream, the girl would climb a tree and wait. If the girl collected shiny pebbles near the river, the cat would sit by the bank, watching over her. At night, when strange sounds filled the forest, the child would cling to the cat, and the cat would pat her back gently with her tail until she drifted to sleep. Their food came from raw fruit, hidden sweet roots, and sometimes visits from a band of friendly monkeys. One particular monkey would even cradle the girl, feed her milk, and play for hours. The cat taught the girl everything: which leaves were toxic, which fruits were sweet. The child learned how to detect a snake's hiss, a mongoose's rustle. At the first sign of danger, she'd scurry up a tree like lightning. Her face had never known tears, because love had never left her alone. But the cat was aging. Her steps had lost their old spring, though her eyes still sparkled. She spent more time beside the girl, watching her closely. Whenever the girl learned something new, the cat's eyes softened with pride. Sometimes, she'd lick the child's hair like she used to bathe her once. And in return, the girl would clean her wounds, wrap her limbs with leaves, and hold her close at night. A love without words, without conditions, just a mother and a daughter. A cat and a human child. They lived in a part of the jungle so deep, so still, even birdsong sometimes got lost in the silence. 7 years had passed. The child was now at an age when questions begin to bloom in the mind. But there was no one to give her answers, until one cold morning changed everything. That day, footprints appeared on the forest soil, neither animal nor hunter. They belonged to an elderly woman, graceful, steady, with wisdom etched in her step. Her name was Miriam, a traveling healer, known in distant villages as the wise woman of herbs and pain. As she pushed aside a thick bush, her hands froze. There, before her, sat a 7-year-old human girl, barefoot, tangled hair, radiant skin, perched on a twisted tree root. Beside her, a cat, not too young, not too old, whose eyes brimmed with deep maternal warmth. The cat licked the girl's chin, then her hair, while the child tugged at the cat's ears and lay her head on the furry belly. It was a sight no storybook could capture. Miriam's eyes widened in disbelief. A human child? Here? She stepped forward cautiously. The jungle was silent. No huts, no voices, no smoke. Just two living souls, a cat and a girl, bound by something older than memory. Miriam slowly sat on the ground. She took out a dry leaf from her pouch, let a few drops of water fall on it, and extended it toward the girl. The child sniffed it but said nothing. It was the first time she had seen another human. She wondered. She looks like me, but why does she feel so different? The cat tensed. Her eyes narrowed as she stepped forward to block the child. Miriam said softly, "She's a human, dear. She belongs with humans. She needs a school, friends, human love." The cat let out a deep meow, not ready to accept it. "I know you've been her mother," the healer said gently. "And a good one. But she must know the world she came from." The cat stepped closer, stood in front of the girl like a shield. They stared at each other, one human, one animal. Then, slowly, Miriam placed a few herbs near the cat and whispered, "I'm not taking her away from you. I'm taking you both with me." She looked at the girl and extended her hand. "Come, my little one. I'll show you a new place. With trees and water, but people too." The girl turned to the cat. The cat said nothing, but a single tear escaped her eye. And then, quietly, she bowed her head. Perhaps she, too, understood. The child had reached an age where the pull of human connection would grow stronger. A new journey began. Miriam took the child's hand and walked toward her old cottage on the forest's edge. The cat, slow but determined, followed. For the first time, the forest saw three shadows walking side by side: a child, a cat, and an old woman. Miriam's cottage wasn't deep forest nor full village. It was in between, a world of balance. Mud and wood walls, a roof of palm leaves, a garden of neem, basil, gooseberry, and rare healing herbs. There, the child woke to her first morning in the world of humans. She was silent but alert, watching, feeling, learning. Miriam called her inside and showed her a mirror. "Look, my child. This is you." The girl stared. Her own eyes. Her waves of hair. Her wild, yet gentle face. She looked at the old woman. Then back at the reflection. Then, slowly, she smiled for the first time. "I'll give you a name," Miriam said. "You are no longer a nameless soul. You are Nazreen. For you grew up in darkness, but carry the light." The cat sat outside, listening. When Miriam said Nazreen, the cat flicked her tail once, as if in agreement. Nazreen began learning. But she was not like ordinary children. When shown herbs, she didn't just memorize them. She observed their scent, their color, the softness or roughness under her fingers. "This is amla root, brings down fever, but not on an empty stomach. This is jailoy, bitter, but fights poison." Nazreen remembered it all and repeated it. Miriam's eyes welled with tears. "You are wise, child," as if born from ancient memories. Alara began to understand human speech, but she still remembered the language of animals. Birds, squirrels, even a cat, watched her with quiet respect, as if they knew she was something special. Alara and the cat still lived together. Her little corner remained outside the cottage. Every morning, Nazreen hugged her first. When the cat fell ill, Nazreen nursed her. When the cat was late, Nazreen stepped outside and called, "Mion," and the cat always came running. Miriam began teaching her to read and write, with green leaf ink on a clay slate. And so, the wild child grew, not just with books but with wisdom, not just with words but with wonder, raised by a cat, named by a healer, and destined for a world beyond both. Nazreen's first word was not something typical like water or food. No, it was Amma. The healer woman, lovingly called Miriam, laughed, and the old cat purred beside her. "You're calling me mother now?" she chuckled. Nazreen simply smiled, but her eyes said more than words ever could. "You both are my mothers." Days began to unfold with a rhythm of their own. At sunrise, Nazreen would water the herbs growing near their hut. By mid-morning, she'd ventured deep into the forest with Miriam to forage for bark, fruits, and medicinal leaves. Afternoons were spent learning to understand human speech, how to read emotions, pain, and truth in people's words. Evenings brought playtime with the cat, climbing trees, running through bushes.
And at night?
Stories by firelight, nestled between her two mothers. Then silence.
Sleep.
But amidst this peace, one question remained unanswered. Alara had never seen another human being. To her, humans only meant Miriam. Where once thorny silence ruled the jungle, now a new light had settled. The earth bore herbs of healing. The air carried the scent of roots, bark, and blooming life. And in the middle of it all was Alara, a girl raised in the lap of nature, trained by instinct, nurtured by love. She was now 21, once suckled by a wild cat, once hidden from the world by a healer who feared the cruelty of mankind. Alara had grown into a wise, graceful, and deeply intuitive young woman. Her education was not from books. It was from the soil beneath her feet. She learned to diagnose wounds from their smell, to treat pain with the earth's touch, and to heal suffering using nothing more than the forest's quiet wisdom. Miriam was now aged, frail, her back bent, hands trembling, but her heart still spoke with the warmth of 1,000 lullabies. She stayed in bed most days. The cat, too, had grown old, its vision fading, but its ears sharp enough to recognize Alara's every step. When Alara prepared medicines, the cat sat beside her. When Alara returned from the woods, the cat waited by the door. And when she slept, the cat curled up at her head, as if still making sure her little girl was safe. The hut had changed over the years. Where once there was only a single dwelling, now there were smaller shelters nearby. Patients came from distant towns and villages. They had heard tales of the forest Hakima, a young woman whose hands could pull pain from flesh without a single blade. She treated wounds with quiet care, listened more than she spoke, and healed without a hint of pride. Her fame grew, but her humility remained. Every morning, the first thing Alara did was sit beside the old cat. She stroked her gently, prepared her food, and whispered stories from their younger days. When the cat was just a fierce protector, when she had saved Nazreen from a mongoose, when a monkey had offered her milk, when the jungle itself had become her cradle. Mother, for Alara, meant two beings. One, a human healer. The other, a feline guardian. Both had shown her what it meant to live. One soft afternoon, with golden light and whispering winds, Miriam packed a small bundle. Some herbs, a few old books, and the wooden tablet where Alara had first written the word, Alma. I have to leave for a few days, she said. A midwife is gravely ill. Her daughter came all the way here to beg for help. Alara said nothing, just nodded quietly. Miriam smiled. I've left rice and vegetables. There's wood in the stove. Don't stay out too late. Nazreen reassured her. Don't worry, Alma. I'll manage. Me and my other Alma, the cat. Miriam left, her walking stick casting long shadows on the walls as she disappeared down the path. The hut felt emptier. The cat stared silently at the door. As dusk fell, Alara lit the fire, cleaned rice, chopped vegetables, and placed the pot on the stove. A warm scent began to rise. The cat sat nearby, her eyes filled with a quiet hunger. But then, crash. Something fell inside the hut. Alara rushed in to find spilled rice and vegetables on the floor. A large monkey had knocked over the pot and escaped. The fire was out. The food ruined. The cat looked up at Alara, still hungry. Alara caressed her head and whispered, Alma, I made a mistake today. There's no food. No fire. The cat licked her hand, then curled up beside her. Alara tried to relight the fire, but no spark came. There were no glowing embers nearby. No neighbors. No Miriam. She couldn't let her cat sleep hungry. Wrapping herself in a shawl, she stepped into the cold jungle night. Her only goal, find fire. Through thorny paths and slippery trails, she moved, fearless and fast. Far off, she saw smoke rising. A hut. She approached, mud walls, a slanted thatch roof, and the faint glow of a fire. An old woman stepped out. eyes small but sharp, face wrinkled, but alert. The moment she saw Alara, she stared. "I've never seen a girl like this," she thought to herself. Beauty clothed in simplicity. Strength without arrogance. "Who are you, child?" the woman asked. "I live in the nearby forest," Alara replied. "My mother is away. Our fire died out." The woman's eyes narrowed, her smile tinged with something cunning. "Come in, sit, rest. You must be tired." Alara sat by the fire, eyes fixed on the burning wood. But in the old woman's mind, a darker thought brewed. If only my son were home. Her son was a monster, not a hunter. He craved not prey, but human flesh, especially of young women. And this mother, she knew. She didn't just allow it, she enabled it. But her son wasn't home. So she just watched and calculated. She needed to know this girl's name, her story, her weaknesses. Alara simply said, "I'm not alone. I have Miriam. And my cat. She raised me." But now, the old woman knew too much. And danger, once again, began to stir in the shadows of the forest. This girl was mistaken. She had grown up in the forest. She could be coaxed, but Nazrine's eyes were fixed on the wooden fire. She rose and said to the old woman, "Mother, I must leave now. Night is falling, and I am hungry, and so is my mother." The old woman smiled warmly, but with a hint of cunning. "Go, my child. But do not come back until the time is right. And don't forget to greet your mother for me." Alara smiled back. She wrapped 2 burning logs in a dry leaf and quietly slipped out of the hut. The old woman stepped outside silently, watching her leave. Where is this girl going? Which hut does she live in? Her gaze followed Nazrine's footprints, disappearing into the forest layers. A slow, deep smile crept across the old woman's face. "Now I only wait for my son's return," she murmured. Meanwhile, Alara hurried down the path, clutching the 2 glowing logs. Relief filled her heart. Soon the hearth would be warm again, and the cat wouldn't sleep hungry. But she didn't know that her innocence had already caught the eye of a predator. She cooked her meal, ate alone, fed the cat, and finally drifted to sleep. The night settled over the hut with complete silence. Only the distant croaking of frogs, the patter of rain, and the rustling of leaves could be heard. Inside, the old woman, the cat, and Alara lay by the dying fire, exhausted but peaceful. The cat breathed softly. Alara's eyes were closed, her face serene, as if she were a child asleep in her mother's embrace. Far away, under the same night sky, a dark intention stirred. The old woman's son had returned, tall, lean, with a wild gleam in his eyes and the stench of rotting animals on his skin. Like a hunter, dripping wet from the rain, he entered the hut and growled, "Is there anything to eat?" The old woman answered softly, "Tonight, you'll see something you'll never forget." The boy's eyes narrowed. Was there a girl? A lone girl? Beautiful, with skin pale like milk, hair dark as webs, and eyes that could turn even a hunter into prey. The son sat up straight. Where did she go? To the far edge of the forest, near where Fish Mother lives. The girl came at night, asking for fire. The boy said nothing. He picked up the sharp dagger hanging from his waist and stalked outside. The old woman warned, "Be careful, son. That girl is human, but her eyes hold more than human secrets." But he wasn't listening. The rain intensified. The muddy path thickened. Water dripped from the trees, and the cold wind stabbed like thorns in every breath. Yet in the boy's eyes, only one image remained, Nazrine. He moved quickly toward the place the old woman had shown him. Back at the hut, sleep had deepened. The fire had died out. The cat's eyes were shut, but its body lay close to Nazrine's. The sound of rain and distant thunder faded into the realm of dreams. Then knock, knock, knock. Alara stirred, but did not wake. Suddenly, a louder crash, bang, bang. The boy was trying to break down the door. Soaked, burning eyes, and a heart raging with fury. He screamed, but the forest swallowed his voice. Frustrated, he punched the door, only to jab his hand on a sharp nail hidden in the wood. Blood trickled down his palm. Fear gripped him. The cold, the blood, the forest silence, all shook him. He stumbled back through the mud, hitting trees on his way, and fled. As dawn's light touched the wooden door, Nazreen rose and stepped outside. She noticed dried bloodstains at the door's base. She stared silently for a while, perhaps thinking it was an animal's injury. She paid no more mind, fetched a bucket of water, and washed the door clean. The forest morning was about to change. Sunlight filtered through leaves, droplets still clinging to branches, and fresh air filled the space. But in the midst of this freshness, a caravan slowly entered the dense woods. At its head was a young man, tall, wheat-colored skin, refined features, eyes full of wonder. His name was King Alaric. King Alaric had come to the forest for hunting, accompanied by 10 soldiers, bearing spears, swords, and horses. As they pushed deeper, a problem arose. They had run out of water. "We cannot endure thirst any longer. Find water, quickly," the prince ordered. The soldiers spread out. After some time, one shouted, "Look, a hut. Maybe someone lives there." Alaric approached cautiously. The hut was tidy, herbs hanging outside, and the door showed slight dampness. As Alaric stepped in, his foot slipped. He fell hard, followed by 2 soldiers. Inside, Alara, startled, ran out. "What happened? Who are you? How did you fall?" Alaric brushed mud off his knees, then his gaze met Nazreen's. He froze, eyes wide, heart pounding. Who is this girl, he wondered. Before him stood a simple girl, plain clothes, uncovered head, bare feet. Alaric spoke softly. "I am King Alaric. I came to hunt, but we ran out of water. I saw your hut and stopped." Alara smiled gently but seriously. "There is water nearby, but you should know, there was blood on the door not long ago. I cleaned it." Alaric bent down to look. Faint stains remained on the dirt floor. He traced them with his fingers. "This isn't animal blood," he said grimly. His eyes scanned the yard, light footprints, some faint, some muddied. He stood and asked, "Do you live here alone?"
No.
"My mother, the cat, and Alma Miriam live with me." Alaric smiled faintly, still filled with wonder. He asked for water. Alara went inside, brought a clay pitcher, and poured water into a copper bowl for him. "Thank you," Alaric said. But his eyes lingered on the bloodstains and footprints. He ordered his men, "Follow these tracks. They lead to danger." The soldiers traced the fresh trail deep into the forest, to the old woman's and her son's hut. Soon, Alaric and his men arrived. The old woman sat outside, her eyes sharp with cunning. "Who are you?" she demanded. Alaric stepped forward, drawing his sword. "Who dared attack a girl's hut at night?" The old woman trembled, but then her son appeared, his hand bandaged, stained with blood. Alaric understood immediately. "Arrest them both. They are a threat to the forest and to humans." The old woman and her son were taken away in chains. On the way back, Sahil returned to Alara's hut. He stood quietly outside. Alara opened the door, surprised to see him still there. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "You live here alone?" Sahil inquired.
No.
"My mother, the cat, and Alma Miriam." Alaric studied her silently, then smiled. "Your name is Alara, right? A beautiful name for a beautiful girl." He mounted his horse and left with his men toward the palace. The scent of the forest soil still lingered, fresh, not yet dry, as if old wounds were being left behind. At that moment, Alma Miriam returned, soaked and tired but eyes sparkling. Alara ran outside to greet her. When Fish Alma embraced her, the whole hut seemed to come alive again. The cat slowly stood, tottered to Fish Alma, and laid its head in her lap. "Is everything all right, daughter?" "Yes, Alma. But so much happened while you were away." Back at the palace, Alaric returned with his men. The old woman and her son were locked behind bars. In the grand audience hall, the king watched his son. His face was troubled, questions filled his mind.
Who are these people?
Why did you venture so deep into the forest? Alaric explained everything. Attack on the girl's hut, bloodstains, and the capture of the culprits. The king stroked his chin thoughtfully. But one thing puzzles me. Who is this girl? If she lives with Amma Miriam, then how can she be her daughter? Amma Miriam was never married. The matter grew more intriguing. Go again, Sahil. This time, ask Amma Miriam yourself who this girl is. Alaric set out once more, this time not alone. He carried baskets of flowers, fruits, medicines, and a heart full of questions. At the hut, Alara, Fish Alma, and the cat sat quietly in the courtyard. Sahil dismounted, greeted respectfully, and asked, Amma, may I ask you something? Amma Miriam smiled softly. Ask, my son. This Alara, is she your daughter? I never heard your marriage story. Amma Miriam took a deep breath.
No, son.
She is not my daughter by birth. I found her abandoned in the forest at the age of 7, near the cat. I met her, taught her, raised her, and gave her all I could. Who were her parents? Alaric asked. Amma Miriam looked down. I don't know. Alaric then glanced at Alara, who still looked as radiant as when he first saw her, but now a secret lay beneath that beauty. Come with me, Alaric said. The King Thomas wishes to meet you, and also Amma Miriam and the cat. Alara nodded, the cat curling in Alaric's arms. The caravan moved toward the palace. As sunlight streamed through the palace towers and into the great hall, the day felt different, full of meaning. Stone floors were strewn with flowers as 3 figures emerged from the world of the forest: Amma Miriam, Alara, and the old cat. King Thomas sat on his throne, surrounded by ministers, healers, and Alaric. Alaric spoke, Father, Amma Miriam come to meet you. And with her, the girl raised in the forest with the cat. Amma Miriam entered the hall, bowing her head, voice calm and dignified. Ask what you will, King Thomas. But know this, I never gave this girl a title of daughter. She came into my life like one. She told the entire story, how she found the girl, how the cat cared for her, how a monkey once fed her milk, how Amma Miriam taught her forest ways. Silence filled the hall. The king's eyes filled with tears. The hands that had abandoned this child now entrusted her to a mother's care. The king reached out. Come, my daughter. Alara stepped forward, her graceful steps echoing dignity, humility, and the quiet strength of a soul at peace. The king was speechless. Finally, he said, You have lived in the forest, yet your grace, wisdom, and manners surpass even those raised in palaces. Alaric then stepped forward. Father, if you permit, and if Amma Miriam and Alara agree, I wish to spend my life with Nazreen. All eyes turned to Nazreen. Amma Miriam took her hand. The choice is yours, my daughter. Alara lowered her gaze and softly replied, If Amma and the cat are with me, I can go anywhere. The hall erupted in joy. The wedding of Alaric and Alara was simple, yet full of respect and love. The palace gardens blossomed with flowers. Everywhere, the scent of pottery, rangoli, embroidery, and henna filled the air. Alara now lived in the palace. A soft bed for the cat was prepared, with sunlight streaming through the window and a golden bowl filled with milk. The old cat sat quietly in the corner of Alara's room. Old now, but a mother to the princess who once grew in its lap. Amma Miriam was given a special room in the palace, where she continued to heal the villagers. Alaric and Alara's union was no longer just a tradition. It became a symbol. A cat who mothered a child. A wise Amma who taught dignity. A prince who honored with respect. Months into their marriage, their bond was not just love or manners. It was a restless question. One night, as moonlight filtered through the palace walls to Alara's chamber, Alara fell silent. Her eyes lowered to the ground, and after a moment, she gave a gentle nod. No questions, no complaints, just a quiet yes. The very next day, the king made a royal proclamation. In every part of the city, at every market, every crossing, and every square, the town criers beat their drums and announced, A girl has been found in the jungle. She is 21 years old, raised by a cat, and educated by a wise old woman known as Miriam Amma. If anyone recognizes her or knows her real identity, come forward at the royal court. Truth-tellers will be rewarded and honored. This message didn't stop at the city. Horsemen carried it to the farthest villages, places so remote that even the dust seemed to rest untouched. And so the news reached a small, forgotten village, hidden behind mud-plastered walls. There, a woman squinted against the sun. Around 45 years old, her face bore the wrinkles of a hard life, and her eyes held a quiet sorrow. Her name was Grace. As she heard the announcement, a 21-year-old girl, raised in the jungle by a cat, her breath caught. The pot in her hand slipped and shattered. Her lips trembled. Her eyes filled with a memory from 21 years ago, a forest, a baby girl, and the moment she had left her child trembling in the bushes because of the fear others had forced upon her. Could she be my daughter? Grace whispered. Her heart raced. The pain she had buried for 2 decades was now demanding a reckoning. Without wasting another moment, she didn't even stop to wear sandals. Wrapping herself in an old shawl, she began walking toward the palace. Inside the palace gardens, the court was quiet. Alara sat with Miriamama and the cat beside her. Prince Alaric was there too, though his heart felt heavy. Would anyone really come? He wondered. And if someone did, what would Alara feel? Just then, a guard entered and announced, "A woman has come. She claims to know the girl." The king was taken aback. He stood, with support, and ordered her to be brought in. Moments later, Grace stepped into the court. Her face showed hesitation. Her eyes were filled with tears. "Do you know this girl?" the king asked. "Yes," she replied softly but clearly. She is my daughter." A stunned silence followed. King Alaric looked at Nazreen, who now stood up slowly. Miriam Ahmed gently held her hand. Grace began to speak. 21 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I fell in love with a young man, but we never married. When I gave birth to our daughter, my brother, my uncle, they all wanted to kill me. Out of fear, to protect her and myself, I left her in the jungle. She broke into tears. Every night, her face haunted me, but I never had the courage to return. The king let out a deep sigh. King Alaric walked toward Alara. Their eyes met. Hers glistened with tears, but there was no bitterness. Alara spoke softly. "So now, I know who I really am." The king turned to Grace. "Your crime was great, but you've shown great courage by speaking the truth. And now, the truth has come to light." The story that had been buried for 21 years was no longer a mystery. It was now an open book, one filled with pain, love, fear, and bravery. Alara now knew her real mother. Her eyes brimmed with emotions, perhaps forgiveness, perhaps anger, perhaps just quiet understanding. But one final chapter remained. The king commanded that the men who had once threatened the mother and child be summoned. 2 days later, 3 tired, aged men entered the palace. Grace's 2 brothers were now in their mid-50s, wrinkled and weak, but still carrying remnants of old arrogance. Their uncle, nearly 70, could barely see, but his mind still clung to ancient hate. The king's voice boomed. "Do you know why you have been called?" They stayed silent. 21 years ago, you dishonored your sister. You threatened to kill her. You abandoned an innocent child to die. That was no mistake, it was a crime. One brother spoke weakly. "We were wrong." The king's eyes hardened. "Wrong? You call it a mistake? You played with the lives of a mother and her newborn child." King Alaric stepped forward. If that cat had not protected the baby, if Miriam Alma hadn't taken her in, would this girl have become our Alara, our pride? Grace wept in the middle of the court. Shame, pain, but also strength filled her eyes. "I didn't kill my daughter," she sobbed. "I left her to save her. I never imagined an animal would become a mother to her. I never dreamed she'd grow up to be a princess." The king raised his hand. "Grace's brothers and uncle shall be imprisoned. Let this be a lesson to all who see women as shame and girls as burdens." Guard stepped forward and arrested the 3 men. Then Miriam Alma walked up to Alara and held her hand. "Child, your journey is complete now. Whatever you decide, I am with you. Alara looked at Grace. Her lips quivered, her eyes were wet, and her head was bowed. Alara walked gently to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. I know you made a terrible mistake, but you are still a mother. And a mother is never completely wrong. I forgive you. The cat stood beside her, rubbing against her leg, letting out a soft meow, as if saying, You are no longer alone. I am still here. The story had finally come full circle. From a hut in the jungle to the palace, the girl had become a queen. But she never forgot her roots, her mother's, or her identity.